Hola mi gente, this is George Laws Garcia, Executive Director of the Puerto Rico Statehood Council. Today, we're thrilled to kick off a compelling three-part series featuring Congresswoman Jenniffer González-Colón.
I can vote in committees, I can present legislation, I can be a voice in the floor of the House, but whenever is legislation coming to the floor, I cannot vote on it.
Throughout her career, Congresswoman González-Colón has been a leading advocate for Puerto Rico's fight for equal rights. In 2017, she became the first woman elected to the U.S. Congress as the island's resident commissioner and has since worked tirelessly to achieve statehood for the 3.2 million U.S. citizens who call Puerto Rico home.
Despite our contributions, despite our long-standing commitment to the values that come with being an American citizen, the reality is that we're still not equal.
In Part 1, we join Congresswoman at her office on Capitol Hill and explore the lack of proportional representation Puerto Rico receives in Congress, the inability to vote on legislation that directly impacts our people, and the discrimination faced by Puerto Rico under the current territory status. But before we jump in, I have a quick favor to ask you. Please make sure to subscribe to our PR51st YouTube channel. Subscribing keeps you in the loop for future videos, including the upcoming episodes in this series. Just hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to join the conversation and learn more about the movement for equality and democracy through statehood for Puerto Rico. Now let's dive into our discussion with Resident Commissioner of Puerto Rico, Congresswoman Jenniffer González-Colón.
Well, we greatly appreciate this opportunity to talk to you. And today we're just going to talk a little bit about this incredibly important issue of the U.S. Citizens of Puerto Rico and the territorial status which they have been under now for 125 years. As the only member of Congress working on behalf of Puerto Rico's 3.2 million U.S. citizens, what are the biggest obstacles that you face to making sure that your constituents are properly represented in Congress?
The same question you're making is just the main difference. I represent 3.2 million American citizens living back home, but each member of Congress represents approximately 750,000 people. So that immediately will tell you that we do not have a proportionate delegation representing the island. So that means that I'm doing the work of 4 members of Congress and at least 2 senators. That puts you in another position of discrimination. Having just said that, the other situation is that I don't have the power of a vote in the floor of the House. So that means that I can vote in committees, I can present legislation, I can be a voice in the floor of the House, but whenever is legislation coming to the floor, I cannot vote on those. So that means if Congress approves whatever, the quality of air, the food we're eating, the water we're drinking, and it's affecting directly Puerto Rico, I cannot say anything. I mean, I can say something, but I cannot vote for that law. That means that we are truly, as the U.S. Constitution said, we are at the mercy of Congress. And that's one of the biggest issues that I'm facing here every day, not just at the Congress, but at the federal government. If Congress decide to discriminate with Puerto Rico in a federal program, discriminate in both ways. We can be included, we cannot be included, we may not be included. That means that's the decision of the U.S. Congress. And the Supreme Court has said that, yes, Congress can discriminate with Puerto Rico. Just because we are a territory, just because we are in the Caribbean, that's the sole reason you can say, you can deny benefits, you can deny rights to people living on the island. Even if you are born and raised in New York, born and raised in Texas, and decide to move to the island, you will lose all those rights.
That sounds terrible.
It is. It is, because many people are not aware that the only way we can achieve things here is actually going directly to each member, making a campaign directly to the member, and I'm the only one doing that. In the floor of the House, in the committees, so nobody else. You don't have a delegation to help you with that. The other big issue is that because we are a territory of the United States, you will have a lot of people that will self-proclaim that they are representing the island. And they will do many things just to score points at the national level, but not necessarily helping the people living on the island. So there's a lot of miseducation about what Puerto Rico represents. Many people believe that Puerto Rico will become a Democratic state or a Republican state without thinking about the life and the people living on the island.
And you mentioned that you're not allowed to vote on the House floor, even though the legislation that Congress passes impacts your constituents.
That happened every day. I will tell you, last week we were approving a bill, and they allowed us to have a mock voting rights in some amendments. That means not every time we can vote. So last week we were voting in an amendment, but because the result was a tie, that means the delegates cannot be counted. So they invalidated the result and did again the vote without the delegates. So that's the way we do things here in Congress. It's like, I feel sometimes like this is a Miss Universe pageant, and you can say what you think, but you cannot put your word and you cannot put your vote with those things. And that's happening here every day. You need to be begging members of Congress for rights of U.S. citizens that are respected in the rest of the country, but not in Puerto Rico. We're talking about veterans. We're talking about women. We're talking about farmers. Every issue regarding the island is an issue of U.S. Congress. People of Puerto Rico cannot vote on those laws.
That sounds extremely frustrating.
It is. In being 125 years out of the U.S., proud American citizens, we do have one of the biggest percentage of people working in the military forces, going to Vietnam, to Iraq, going to Korea, been condecorated by Congress. But yet those veterans are treated differently just because they live in Puerto Rico. And that's the reason you do have 5 million Puerto Ricans living in the mainland and just 3 million living on the island, because the rights and benefits are not going to be the same. And why? We don't want to move to the mainland. The beaches are not better than us. The food is not better than the ones in Puerto Rico. But because of the lack of those rights, many people don't have a choice. They need to move.
That veterans argument resonates with me a lot because my father served in the military. Both of my grandfathers served in the military. My stepfather served in the military. I have a cousin who's still serving right now. And if they're in Puerto Rico, they're denied full rights as U.S. citizens and can't vote for their commander-in-chief, and they can't vote for a voting member of Congress in the House or any representation in
and
the
you
Senate.
know what? I hear many people at the mainland level saying, oh, let's fix those laws. Let's fix that law just to treat them fairly. But you know what? What's the problem is that a Congress can approve any bill to fix that, and another Congress can come and actually reverse that. And that happens every time. And even the Supreme Court said many times that, yes, Congress can discriminate with Puerto Rico. And we saw it in many cases, like Social Security income. A person who was living in New York and received their benefits by Social Security income, he decided to move to the island, he loses those benefits. This is just one of the examples that we're treating differently every time.
And this year is a particularly important year because this year marks the 125th anniversary from when the United States essentially landed in Puerto Rico and made it its own territory. This makes Puerto Rico the oldest and most populated territory in the United States. Can you tell us how the current territory status is disenfranchising voters, impeding innovation and economic growth, and even endangering national security for the United States?
I'm going to tell you one of the issues I was just discussing with a member of Congress. Last year, U.S. officials just seized more than 200,000 pounds of drugs in U.S. Puerto Rico and U.S. Virgin Islands. And that drugs that were seized on the island, 80% of that drugs will come directly to the mainland, to the eastern part of the United States. So national security got a border in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, specifically in our frontier with Dominican Republic and water frontier with international waters of Colombia and Venezuela. So if people believe that because we are just a territory, we are not part of the international game of what's happening, I mean, you need to go back to Puerto Rico and see what's happening. A lot of our officials, security officials, CBP officers, Homeland Security, ICE members, even local police, every time of the year, they're dealing with smugglers, they're dealing with trafficking, they're dealing with drugs. Even one was shot last year doing their job. This is not America. This is not the way you deal with this kind of issues. Why? Just because we are surrounded by another islands? No, we're part of the U.S. with the southern border of the United States, and we should treat Puerto Rico as a state. in terms of our policy with narcotics, in terms of our policy with drugs, in terms of our policy with smugglers. So keeping Puerto Rico safe means keeping our national scene safe as well. And one of the issues that being a territory is crippling our economy is that many people are not aware that 47% of Puerto Rico's economy is pharmaceutical, is medical devices, industries, manufacturing. Many people may think it's tourism, but it's not. Just imagine Puerto Rico becoming a state, that meaning we are under the US flag, for purposes of bringing back a lot of manufacturing and offshore that is now in China and many other Asian countries. Once Puerto Rico got our star and become a state, we can allow to bring more manufacturing to the island and actually serving as a bridge with Latin America and the rest of the US. But right now, for some federal laws, we are treated as part of the US as a territory, but for others, we are considered a foreign country. So that's crippling our economy because many companies, they don't know how to deal with that. For some reasons in the IRS, you're not part of the US, but for others you are. And that's the lack of stability, that this territorial position on the island is impeding a lot of Puerto Ricans to succeed, to thrive and to have a better economy. When Hawaii and Alaska became a state, their economy grew at 300% in 10 years. Just imagine what can happen allowing Puerto Rico to become a state, not just doubling our economy, but allowing the United States to benefit from that economy on the island. Not just pharmaceutical, medical devices, electronic devices that are just made in the island, but the financial professionals that are right now doing a lot of counseling in Latin America as well.
Hey, mi gente, we hope you enjoyed part 1 of this series. Before we wrap up, make sure to subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media to stay in the loop for future videos, including part 2 of this series.